And we're back to learning to code. I've finished my HTML tutorial series last year and I'm currently working on a bigger HTML course. But this year I want to go through the basics of CSS. For you to be able to follow me step by step, we need a simple setup. I'm going to use tools that everyone has on his computer or should have by default. This was my tutorial website. We're going to create a new folder for CSS tutorials website. I'm just on my desktop here. You can place your own there if you want to follow this course step by step, video by video. Now it's empty, obviously, we haven't put anything in there, but right click on it, new, and add a new folder, for example, for images. We'll need that later on. I'll call it IMG. And we'll put everything inside of this folder. For example, we need a new text document. I'm going to use a simple text editor. It looks like this. Pretty sure you've seen it. And we're going to use it to create the index HTML and the CSS style pages or files. Let us start with the index. I'll comment this. And don't get confused here, my setup is set to German, but you should find everything in your English version at the very exact same spots. We go to save as. It's important to save it with the correct name. And we'll put it in our CSS tutorials website folder. As I've said, it's called index, therefore we need index.html. And be sure to set the data type via the dropdown to all data. That's important or it's not going to work, and then just save. So we'll have our index now here, and it's indicated that it's an HTML document by having this Firefox icon automatically, which is my default browser. So when you see that on your index, you've done it correctly. If not, stop the video, rewind it, and follow the steps once again carefully. We'll need a new window for this text editor. This is for our CSS, which is the cascading style sheet. Is going to be used for styling websites. Save as yet again. We are in our tutorials website folder. Call it styles.css. And yet again, data type, set it to all data, which is important. Then save. And here again, it's indicated that it's done correctly by setting the type to cascading style sheet. And then you have this empty page with, what is it, a gear icon. And that indicates, at least in Windows, that you've done it correctly. So we've set up these two pages. Now we're going to open the index in our web browser. As I've said, I'm using Firefox for this tutorial series. You can use whatever you want. Just make sure to open it with a double click and then add your browser window as the third file. We're going to position them like this so you can see them all next to one another. Let me type in this is a test on the index, and you can see this is directly displayed on the website in the browser. Now we'll have to connect our CSS, but first let us add basic HTML boilerplate. We use a doc type declaration, HTML tags, opening, closing, head and body. And to make sure that everything works, let me turn this into an H1 to check. And it works. Inside of the head, we'll add meta information. If this is totally new to you, check out my HTML playlist where I've gone over all of this step by step. So what we're doing here is building up on this HTML tutorial series. And yet again, I'm in the process of creating a beginner HTML video, which is a little bit longer. So you may want to check that out if all of this boilerplate stuff is new to you. We need a char set, then responsiveness via viewport. And what I haven't talked about in my HTML tutorial series is how we can now use this to link our CSS. So we want to use the third page that we have on the right, the styles.css, and connect it to our index so that we can adjust the appearance. We're going to see on the left hand side in the browser. First, let me add a title as well, CSS Tutorials website. It's now in the browser tab. And now it's time to link it. We can use a link tag for that. We'll add it in the head. Relationship is a style sheet, and then we'll need the address. It's an href of styles.css, but this address only works because we've placed the CSS file in the same folder as our index. So make sure that you've got that as well. Let me check if everything has worked by selecting the H1, and I make the color red. And there you go, everything works. So this should work for you too if you do that. Use H1, curly brackets, and inside color, and set the value to red, add a semicolon. And let me, for example, add background minus color, make it green. So our CSS affects the index. But if we, for example, put the styles inside of the image folder, it's not going to be linked anymore. In this case, you would have to add the img before styles.css. So once again, the position of this cascading style sheet in relation to the index is important. Put it in the same place, and then styles.css should work, as you've seen in this real-time video. And that's the correct setup, or at least the setup that we're going to use for this CSS tutorial series. I hope this video was helpful, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.